When they woke in the morning, it was the 3rd day since they had left their father's cottage. They started to walk again, but they only got deeper and deeper into the wood, and if no help came, they must perish. At midday they saw a beautiful snow-white bird sitting on a tree. It sang so beautifully that they stood still to listen to it. When it stopped, it fluttered its wings and flew around them. They followed it till they came to a little cottage, on the roof of which it settled itself. When they got quite near, they saw that the little house was made of bread, and it was roofed with cake. The windows were transparent sugar. "Here's something for us," said Hansel. "We can have a good meal. I'll have a piece of the roof, Gretel, and you can have a bit of the window. It'll be nice and sweet." Hansel stretched up and broke off a piece of the roof to try what it was like. Gretel went to the window and nibbled at that. A gentle voice called out from within, "Nibbling, nibbling like a mouse, who's nibbling at my house?" The children answered, the wind doth blow from heaven to earth below," and went on eating without disturbing themselves. Hansel, who found the roof very good, broke off a large piece for himself, and Gretel pushed a whole round pane out of the window and sat down on the ground to enjoy it. All at once the door opened, and an old woman, supporting herself on a crutch, came hobbling out. Hansel and Gretel were so frightened that they dropped what they held in their hands, but the old woman only shook her head and said, "Ah, dear children, who brought you here? Come in and stay with me. You will come to no harm." She took them by the hand and led them into the little house. A nice dinner was set before them of pancakes and sugar, milk, apples and nuts. After this she showed them 2 little white beds into which they crept, and felt as if they were in heaven. Although the old woman appeared to be so friendly, she was really a wicked old witch who was on the watch for children, and she had built the bread house on purpose to lure them to her. Whenever she could get a child into her clutches, she cooked it and ate it, and considered it a grand feast. Witches have red eyes and can't see very far, but they have keen scent, like animals, and can perceive the approach of human beings. When Hansel and Gretel came near her, she had laughed wickedly to herself and said scornfully, "Now I have them, they shan't escape me." She got up early in the morning, before the children were awake, and when she saw them sleeping with their beautiful rosy cheeks, she murmured to herself, "They will be dainty morsels." She seized Hansel with her bony hand and carried him off to a little stable, where she shut him up with a barred door. He might shriek as loud as he liked. She took no notice of him. Then she went to Gretel and shook her till she woke and cried, "Get up, little lazy bones, fetch some water and cook something nice for your brother. He's in the stable and has to be fattened. When he's nice and fat, I'll eat him." Gretel began to cry bitterly, but it was no use. She had to obey the witch's orders. The best food was now cooked for poor Hansel, but Gretel only had the shells of crayfish. The old woman hobbled to the stable every morning and cried, "Hansel, put out your finger for me to feel how fat you are." Hansel put out a knuckle bone, and the old woman, whose eyes were dim, could not see, and thought it was his finger. She was much astonished that he did not get any fatter. When 4 weeks had passed, and Hansel was still thin, she became very impatient, and would wait no longer. "Now then, Gretel," she cried, "bustle along and fetch the water. Fat or thin, tomorrow I will kill Hansel and eat him." Oh, how his poor little sister grieved as she carried the water. The tears streamed down her cheeks. "Dear God, help us," she cried. "If only the wild animals in the forest had devoured us, we should at least have died together." "You may spare your lamentations. They'll do you no good," said the old woman. Early in the morning Gretel had to go out to fill the kettle with water, and then she had to kindle a fire and hang the kettle over it. "We will bake first," said the old witch. "I have heated the oven and kneaded the dough." She pushed poor Gretel toward the oven and said, "Creep in and see if it's properly heated, and then we'll put the bread in." She meant, when Gretel had got in, to shut the door and roast her. But Gretel saw her intention and said, "I don't know how to get in. How should I do it?" "Stupid goose," cried the witch. "The opening is big enough. Look, I could get into it myself." She hobbled up and stuck her head into the oven, but Gretel gave her a push which sent the witch right inside, and then she banged the door and bolted it. "Ow! Ow! Ow!" she began to howl horribly, but Gretel ran away and left the wicked witch to perish miserably. Gretel ran as fast as she could to the stable. She opened the door and cried, "Hansel, we are saved. The old witch is dead." Hansel sprang out like a bird out of a cage when the door is opened. How delighted they were! They fell upon each other's necks and kissed each other and danced about for joy. As they had nothing more to fear, they went into the witch's house, and they found chests in every corner full of pearls and precious stones. "These are better than pebbles," said Hansel as he filled his pockets. Gretel said, "I must take something home with me too," and she filled her apron. "But now we must go," said Hansel, "and get out of this enchanted wood." Before they'd gone very far, they came to a great piece of water. "We can't get across it," said Hansel. "I see no stepping stones and no bridge." "And there are no boats either," answered Gretel. "But there is a duck swimming. It will help us over if we ask it." So she cried, "Little duck that cries quack, quack, here Gretel and here Hansel stand. Quickly take us on your back, no path or bridge is there at hand." The duck came swimming towards them, and Hansel got on its back and told his sister to sit on his knee. "No," answered Gretel, "it will be too heavy for the duck. It must take us over one after the other." The good creature did this, and when they had got safely over and walked for a while, the wood seemed to grow more and more familiar to them, and at last they saw their father's cottage in the distance. They began to run and rushed inside, where they threw their arms around their father's neck. The man had not had a single happy moment since he had deserted his children in the wood, and in the meantime his wife was dead. Gretel shook her apron and scattered the pearls and precious stones all over the floor, and Hansel added handful after handful out of his pockets. So all their troubles came to an end, and they lived together as happily as possible. The end.